Hello, I'm here to present to you my chapter on Slaughterhouse Five, which is chapter 4, and begin with some plot. The first, the chapter opens with Billy, on the night of his daughter's wedding, and he's unable to sleep, so he walks down the hall towards his daughter's empty bedroom. And when he gets there, the Hello Kitty phone in his daughter's bedroom rings, and he answers it, but it was a drunk who dialed the wrong number. Vonnegut describes it as there was a drunk on the other end. Billy could almost smell the mustard gas and roses in his breath, which is an important recurring symbol. But after that, Billy goes downstairs and reopens a half-full bottle of champagne that turns out to be flat, and then Vonnegut comments, "So it goes," which is also an important theme of the book. Billy starts watching sits down on the couch and starts watching a World War II documentary with it's on American pilots and the bombers during World War II, but he watches it backwards, actually. He's unstuck in time slightly, and so he watches it backwards. And so the description is, the formation flew backwards over a German city that was in flames. The bombers opened their bomb bay doors, exerted a miraculous magnetism which shrunk the fires, gathered them into cylindrical steel containers, and lifted the containers into the bellies of the planes. The containers were stored neatly in racks. So after that, Billy, as he continues to watch the documentary, he witnesses the pilots turning in their uniforms, just because it keeps going backwards in time until they're finally turning in their uniforms. And then he begins imagining Hitler as a baby, even though it wasn't in the documentary. And then Billy imagines that all of time was going backwards, and all of humans' biological efforts go into creating these two perfect people called Adam and Eve, which is obviously a biblical reference. But this whole time he's been waiting he knows that he's going to be kidnapped by the Tralfamadorians and their flying saucer, and so he's just been passing the time until that happens. He goes out, so now at this point he goes outside to wait for the flying saucer, because he knows it's inevitable. And then when it comes, he doesn't even bother to look up at it. He just waits for it to touch down. He doesn't even turn his eyes towards the sky, is what it says. And then when the flying saucer approaches, the Tralfamadorians let down a ladder, point a stun gun at him, which makes him feel as if he's forced to climb the ladder. And when he touches the ladder, he becomes paralyzed and stuck to the ladder, and his brain stops working until he gets back in the ship, or into the the ship. And only when he's in the ship does his brain start working again, and he can move again, and he becomes unstuck. And then he asks, "Why me?" When he's in the ship, to which the Tralfamadorians reply through an automated system, because they can't speak. They communicate with their minds. They say, "Why you? Why us, for that matter? Why anything? Because this moment simply is. Have you ever seen bugs trapped in amber?" Which is a reference they use a lot to say that each moment is its own thing. And we'll see it later in the chapter as well. Um, but then after that, the Tralfamadorians and anesthetize Billy, which, yeah, they do that. And then they secure him in a yellow Bocker lounger stolen from a Sears and Roebuck warehouse, which is kind of weird. But then, while Billy is sleeping, the acceleration of the saucer sends Billy back in time to when he was in a POW train in Russia. Well, I think it was. Let's see. The train was in Germany, not Russia. Okay. But so he's traveling across Germany in a POW train. He's with other American prisoners of war, and he gets there and it's very dark and it's dark outside, and he attempts to sleep on the floor of the train, but no one wants to sleep by him because they all hate him for some reason. Like he's wronged them in some way. And the quote is, "Everybody told Billy Pilgrim to get the hell away." To keep the hell away. So Billy attempts to sleep standing up, but on the 8th day of the train trip, Billy's talking to a hobo who claims he can be happy anywhere, just saying, he says, like, this ain't bad, but really it's, I don't know, it seems pretty bad. But the hobo dies, actually, the next day, on the 9th day. And then Vonnegut immediately comments, "So it goes," after his death. And then Roland, Weary, and Billy Pilgrim both die on the 9th day as well. And Billy is responsible for Weary's death. Okay. The train comes to a stop, and the door to the boxcar is opened by German guards, and the Americans, who were in just terrible shape, he describes them, they were such in bad shape that he doesn't even describe them as humans. He describes them as liquid that fell to the ground. And the hobo who was dead is described as a stone, and he plopped to the ground. And then the Americans were taken to what initially looked like 3 haystacks, but it turned out to be a pile of overcoats taken from dead soldiers. And then Vonnegut immediately comments, "So it goes." The guards encouraged the POWs to wear the German guards encouraged the POWs to wear the overcoats, and they had to break up the ice between them with their bayonets. And Billy was the only one who received. He looked around at his friends, and he was the only one who received an overcoat from a dead civilian, rather than the rest had like soldier overcoats. So it goes. And then the narrator introduces Edgar Derby at this point, and immediately mentions how healthy he is, but then right after he says that he will not make it through the war, and cites his death in Dresden at the hands of firing squad in 68 days. So just points to non-chronological time, and that everything, is determined. But then another character is introduced, Paul Lazaro. He's described as rough and like has the ugliest body of all the naked POWs. And then while Billy and the rest of the POWs are in the cold showers, their clothes pass through poison gas to kill the bugs and bacteria on them, which Vonnegut says, "So it goes," right after that, which is just another mention of death. Very flippant about it. And then during this scene, Billy flashes back in time to his infancy, where his mom just was playing with him and took very good care of him, and Billy was gurgled and cooed, which is kind of a sign of innocence. And then Billy travels forward to where he was a middle-aged optometrist and playing golf with his friends. Not very good. It says hacking golf with his friends, but and then Billy immediately after that, going there, he is back on the Tralfamadorian saucer, and he's tied to the lounger still, and he's told, the Tralfamadorians tell him that they're headed to Tralfamador, which is the planet they're from, and Billy asks, "How did I get here?" To which the aliens respond, "There's no how, but this is just a moment in amber," and that they comment that that Earthlings are the great explainers of the universe, but that Billy needs to just accept that this is a moment in amber, like they said. And then Billy says, "It sounds like you don't believe in free will," to which they reply, "Only on Earth is there talk of free will." So that's also an important theme in the novel, and that closes the chapter. Now we're going to discuss the style of the chapter, which is similar to the rest of the book. And in that it is very, it's very like So It Goes. It's just got a tone that, it's just like, this is how it is, this is how it always was, this is how it always will be. And he seems very resigned to the fact that reality is the way it is. And you can tell that through his diction as well as his repetition of "So it goes" throughout the chapter. For example, he says that when he opened the champagne bottle right before he started watching the documentary, it says it didn't make a pop. The champagne was dead. So it goes. And then he describes, this is just an example of just a selected passage. His name was, where he's introducing Edgar Derby. He says his name was Edgar Derby. He hadn't been in Billy's boxcar. He'd been in Roland Weary's car. Had cradled Weary's head while he died. So it goes. Which just also shows the style that Vonnegut is writing with. And his word choice, his diction in the chapter is comical, but very like, it's like cutting. It gets at real issues, and just, I don't know, it's brilliant. But he says, when he's talking about the documentary Traveling Backwards, he says that he's talking about the women dismantling the weapons, which really in reality they were assembling them. But he says, touchingly, it was mainly women who did this work. Just saying that it was very nice for them to dismantle the weapons,